Council has gone through the difficult task of actually selecting some of those greenfield sites, which you'll see in the draft local plan, which we're consulting on from today onwards for the next 6 weeks or so. And also I'm going to take you through some detail on some of the particular sites identified in the Portchester area. So firstly, in terms of how the Council has gone about this task, and it really is quite a challenging task to identify which greenfield sites should be put forward for development. Councillor Woodward mentioned we're sort of inundated with potential land, and we don't need all of that land. So how do we arrive at the land needed for 2,500 homes? What you'll actually see up there are 3 of the key issues which the Council takes into account. Firstly, looking at valued landscapes and seeking to protect those wherever possible. Trying to avoid key settlements joining up and losing their community identity. And then also trying to ensure the greenfield land that's being put forward is close to existing urban areas. And that's important because it means that those new houses are quite close to existing services or possibly public transport where that's available. But another key issue, and this has been more and more of an issue in the planning system generally, and a key issue for sort of government, is that the sites that the Council puts forward in the local plan are deliverable. And what I mean by that is that there's a good prospect that they'll actually get built, whether or not it's in the next 5 years, 10 years, or 15 years. But the Council needs to have quite a lot of evidence that the sites will actually be built out, which means quite a lot of work ahead with landowners or developers to sort of gain those guarantees. And it actually also does mean that those sites need to be viable. It means that it's got to make sense for a developer to move forward with that development, notwithstanding all the requirements which we would impose on those developers, whether that's affordable housing, as you talked about, or open space provision, for example. Another thing that is very important in terms of selecting sites is really looking at the impacts of development on a particular piece of greenfield land, whether or not it's wildlife, but critically also on the local road network. And that really is, you're very aware, it's a preeminent issue. We have to do lots of work and have been doing lots of work and will continue to do lots of work with Hampshire County Council as the highways authority to actually look at how can we actually mitigate the impact of further development on some of these greenfield sites. Councils do have choices as they come forward with their development strategies in terms of looking at where greenfield sites should be. The emphasis on brownfield sites in existing urban areas, which Councillor Woodward mentioned, that's something which is really enshrined in government's sort of national planning policy and something which all councils should follow. But it gets that much trickier when you're actually looking at greenfield land releases and how should they be identified. The particular approach that the Council has taken in the draft local plan, and this is something we'll welcome comments on, is to go for a development strategy which has a very heavy reliance on a small number of larger greenfield sites. There are some small ones too, but larger greenfield sites on the whole. And the reason for that is it's seen that there are real opportunities to achieve quality schemes where you've got those larger sites. To get open spaces, public spaces, for example, and also it's seen there's more prospect of getting decent contributions towards infrastructure improvements, whether or not that's transport improvements or to go to the education authority to help with the provision of school places, for example. But they do take longer to deliver. And you heard from Councillor Woodward about the Cranley Road appeal and about the fact that the Council in particular needs to look at how can it deliver housing over the next 5 years. And that's why in particular as well as those larger sites, which will deliver over a longer period of time. There are a number of smaller sites in there as well, and some of those will be able to deliver that much sort of quicker and help us with our sort of housing land supply over the next 5 years. The plan up there, you'll see, it's a working plan. It just shows really the sort of outcome really of this sort of very tricky site selection process. You'll see it in the local plan documentation, which is available online or in the libraries, all sorts of technical documents. But really, what it comes down to is arriving at selecting sites for being put forward for consultation in terms of further development. And some sites have made it through, and some sites have not. So we'll get lots of representations from developers depending on whether or not the sites they've put forward have been successful or not. But alongside all those developer representations, it's going to be very important to get the views from the local communities, individual residents, local community groups as well.
Very uneven, isn't it? That picture. Do you agree?
I'm more than happy to respond on that particular sort of issue straight away. In putting forward a development strategy, in very simple terms, it's not purely around an even spread of development. If you think of the council's last local plan, the core strategy some years ago, that Councillor Woodward mentioned, there was a particular development strategy there which put all of the greenfield developments in one location, at Wellbourne. That was seen as an appropriate development strategy, and that also went through a public examination and was found as a good strategy. So really it's down to the planning authority to put forward a development strategy and seek views on that, and then obviously go through a public examination ahead. I'm now going to turn to the Portchester area, and in particular what I'd like to do is give you a bit of an overview of really the key sites, the key greenfield sites being put forward for consultation in the Portchester area. You'll see that theme of larger greenfield sites is coming through. So you'll see 2 large greenfield sites there, east of Downend Road, and also south of Rodsley Avenue, 2 very sizable sites there. And then Cranley Road, obviously that one has a planning consent already, given the recent appeal, but that is effectively put forward in the local plan. And then the last one is at Morant Drive, which is a smaller scheme. And there you can see, I'm sure most of you be very familiar with the area. That just gives you an overview of where those different those 4 greenfield sites actually are in relation to the existing urban area, which is shown in grey, and the other areas of countryside which are shown in green. So moving through each of the sites, the slides that I've got going through now are really quite self-explanatory. This one is east of Downend Road, so sandwiched between the railway line and the M27. And we'll see there the estimate, all the work done to date, which is very much consulted upon, is pointing to 350 homes, maximum storey heights there of 2.5. And so some of the key issues, so you've got the setting of Portsdown Hill, so you've got a more sensitive sort of landscape as you move to the north of the site. You've got something called a triple SI, Site of Special Scientific Interest, at Downend Chalk Pit, and there's also possible archaeological remains. So as with each of these sites, those are sort of environmental factors that need to be considered when looking at development. I would just add, it's very, very rare, even with the greenfield sites, that you don't have issues such as these that need to be sort of addressed in looking at allowing for new development. So main entrance through from Downland Road on the west side there of the area, with the area shown as possible for development, shown with the red outline. There's the opportunity for sort of green corridors through the site, and in particular there is the possibility of sort of pedestrian cycle routes through to join the residential areas to the east, and that's just the sort of detail which will be very interesting to get local views on. And the other thing in relation to this site, and you'll see this, it's a consistent theme with each of the sites, there's this opportunity with these bigger sites to get contributions, whether or not that's towards local roads or improving, providing new open space in the site of this size, but also contributions towards education places, and that's particularly on the primary school side of things.
Excuse me, could you explain what that red line on the far east is there, going on its own? The bottom road?
On which side?
On the far east there?
On the far east. I mean, that in actual fact shows where potentially there are sort of corridors, movement corridors, which could go through to the adjoining residential areas in the east. So, pedestrian routes or cycle routes, for example. So that's just the sort of detail. It's just the sort of detail which you'll find in the documents, and it's just the sort of detail which we're looking to receive comments on to see what the local community think is or isn't a good idea. So this is the highway access is from the west side. From Downland Road. That's where the highway access indeed. And what is shown on the east side there is the possibility of pedestrian and cycle routes through to those adjoining residential areas. But the highway access is from the west side of the site onto Downland Road.
Just one highway?
That's correct. One access point, yes. But and certainly, I mean, that site would need some improvements to the local highway network, where you've got Downland Road, you've got the railway bridge, you've got the junction with the A27, and possibly changes at Jolley roundabout. Those are all the sorts of details which we work through. We'll welcome your views on that, and there'll be lots of detailed work with Hampshire County Council as a host. The next site I'm going to go through is land on the south side of Romsey Avenue.
Excuse me, can you tell me what the little hatched parts are all over the site? Squares around.
What it actually said, it's a notation. I'll come on and sort of talk about this. It's about the fact, the possibility of sort of brent geese and waders actually using a particular site. What that means is that a developer who's coming forward with a scheme needs to ensure they've done appropriate survey work to see the extent to which a particular site is used by sort of brent geese and waders. That survey work has to be to the satisfaction of Natural England, which, for those of you who don't know, is the government's national body who is concerned with wildlife, and they advise this council and all councils across the land.
How do Natural England check on that, can I just ask? How do they check? Do they check from their computer, or do they actually go to the site, or how do they check?
At the end of the day, Natural England set out very clear methods that developers and their consultants...
Who checks they're doing that, though?
Well, if I may, that the developers and their consultants would have an agreed method of surveying the sites, an agreed method of collecting the data, presenting that data, and then would advise the council on the outcome of all of that. So it's what Natural England are very much the experts in terms of whether or not they feel that the information from the developers is accurate or not, and advise the council accordingly.
But how do they check that? That's the question I'm asking.
I think you need to answer that question.
Can I just stop everybody? Please could you let me finish? I know you're going to have lots of questions. Write them down, and at the end, answer the questions. And finish the presentation, question,
But if somebody
and
else
then
asks a question, so he should answer it.
at the end, we'll take all the questions, and then we finish the
You just
presentation.
waited several minutes, otherwise. I think if he has been asked a question, I appreciate that, you should wait. But if he
Yes,
has been asked a question, I
Yeah.
think he should answer it.
I appreciate that, but I'm trying to stop any further ones and let the presentation finish.
Can we answer the question first? And then, who monitors the work? And that's really another question was asked. Who monitors it?
I don't know.
That's okay.
I don't know. There's a lot more that I can add to what I've already said. The work that is done by the developers and their consultants is reviewed by Natural England, who are the government appointed experts on wildlife who advise the councils as a planning authority. And that is the approach across the country. So, if I just run through the other issues on Romsey Avenue, an estimate of 225 homes in terms of the capacity of the site. Again, maximum of 2 stories in height. And the other key environmental issue is sort of badger sets and any work that is needed to either protect or relocate badger sets. Another key issue is looking at the retention of and strengthening of any hedgerows. The main entrance from the north, from the existing Romsey Avenue, and then provision of a loop road within the site. And there is the possibility here of, again, pedestrian cycle routes, not highway routes, but pedestrian cycle routes through to the adjoining site to the east, which is the Cranley Road site, that I'll come on to. And again, as with the Down End Road site, the opportunity, because of the size of the site, for infrastructure improvements, whether or not that's on the highway side of things, education, some on-site open space, and also on-site sort of, play provision as well. Cranley Road, obviously the site subject to the planning appeal, 120 homes, the reserve planning application which is now in with the council. Key issues that's got to sort out is, again, appropriate sort of a relocation of the badger set there, but also you'll see it's got to sort out the detail of the highways now, pedestrian cycle routes, look at the hedgerow provision there, and again, all the details in terms of negotiating those contributions towards infrastructure will all now need to be sort of finalised as that works its way through the planning process. New site that's put forward in the local plan, although this is one which is also has a live planning application on it, is at Moran Drive, an estimate of just under 50 houses. So area of land to the north of Wicker Park. Key issues again, the issue of rent fees and waivers. There's particular visual sensitivities around the site, the adjoining residential areas, so you've got to be very careful with the planting around the border of the sites. And then, obviously, main entrance through from Moran Drive, need to look at pedestrian cycle connections, and again, the same issues in terms of infrastructure improvements, but there are particular opportunities here to improve some of the existing open space, particularly area of land to the south, and seeking to secure that as open space in perpetuity. What that means is that it's forever and a day protected as sort of open spaces for development. And that's something which the council very commonly does on development sites. I could point to a number of sites around the borough, such as at Cold East or at Titchfield, where alongside development, further open space has been protected indefinitely for public benefit. So, finish running through all the various different sites. Obviously, I'd like to have further questions on some of those later on, I'm sure. But the key thing to wrap up with is the really what we're trying to do with this consultation sort of exercise. So we're very interested in any particular site specifics, and I think in going out to the local communities we're bound to get more information, local information about various different sites, which we'll certainly welcome, and that can help us sort of refine refine the proposals in the plan. The second sort of issue there is you may not actually agree with some of the sites being put forward. So we certainly welcome any suggestions you have in terms of alternative sites. You will see, you've seen in some of the presentation slides, and you'll see in the documentation, there are many other sites which developers have put forward. You may well feel that some of those other sites put forward by developers are better sites. So that's something we welcome your views on. And the third thing is, you may just not feel that our development strategy is correct. I talked about a very different development strategy we had last time with Wellborn. You may not feel that this development strategy with greenfield sites and reliance on large greenfield sites is correct. So we'd welcome your views on that as well. So the end of the consultation is at Friday the 8th of December, so it's just over 6 weeks. On the back of your agenda, you've got all the sort of details as to how you can provide the council with comments on the draft local plan and on the proposals. Final slide from me is just to give you an idea of the process ahead. It is quite an involved process. It may seem quite bureaucratic, but this is the process all councils across the land has to go through. And I think the very important thing is that as this consultation closes, then for quite a period of time, the council is assessing all of those responses that come back in from the consultation. We then have to produce quite extensive reports summarising and addressing key issues which have come out of the consultation exercise. And all of that needs to be reported at the next stage of the plan, which is called the publication plan. And that will be next summer, that will go forward to the councillors for consideration. And again, that goes out for another round of consultation, so you have your further opportunity to consult on that publication plan. That publication plan is effectively the plan which the council would wish to adopt. So it's a much later stage. And effectively, the publication plan, with the comments at that stage, all goes off to a building inspector. A plan examination is out of the hands of the council. We just present our evidence, and then in due course you get the inspector's report and the plan can be adopted. But you'll see there, there's been a number of mentions of sort of all the supporting evidence and documentation. That is because of the nature of the process that we have to go through. So with that, I'll close and